I was always kind of like, as a young kid, I was always jotting things down, and I was always interested in writing. I always liked to read. And then when I was in high school, I worked in. I grew up in Linden, New Jersey, and I worked at the Plaza Theater, which was this big, grand, old Art Deco 1930s movie theater. And I was an usher, and I worked there for 3 years. And so it was like going to film school. I mean, I saw everything, and like anything that that they threw up on the screen, I saw multiple times. And it was a very eclectic mix of foreign films and independent films and classic films and whatever the film was of the moment. And so I was instantly taken by the art of storytelling. And when I got to college, I went to Rowan University. I had this wonderful mentor there, Dr. Libro. And I had her for creative writing too. And she sort of nurtured me. And she encouraged me to write every day and to keep a journal. In fact, she gave me 2 gifts. One was a journal, and one was a collection of plays by Arthur Miller. Where I work at Hudson County Community College, they have this wonderful, beautiful gallery on the top floor, brand new gallery overlooked with sweeping views of Manhattan. And I had been asked to do a show there, and I presented a collection of playbills from virtually every show that I have seen in New York. It was 285 playbills. So it covered 3 walls in the gallery, and I had all these other artifacts around, my sort of journey through the theater. And I wrote a solo performance piece to accompany it, and I performed it 2 times, and then everything had to shut down because of the pandemic. And so it was very frustrating, and I considered maybe I should do it as a Zoom performance. And then, I decided that nobody really wants to stare at one person for 50 minutes without something to cut away to, which I'm sure you appreciate. And so I repurposed the play as a podcast. And so it's called The Playbill Gallery, A Love Story, which is, it tells the story of my journey through the theater, and it gives a nod to the many, many playbills and the many, many shows that I've seen, including over 100 shows at Lincoln Center Theater. And I tell the story of my journey, through not just my career, but through my journey as a fan and a student of theater. I've had bursts. Let's just say I've had bursts. I adapted this, my play into a podcast, which was, which took some work, took a little bit of, time and effort. And I keep moving forward on my play, Yuppies Invade My House at Dinner Time, but the difference has been without the urgency, because they're like, okay, so now it's done. What do you do with it? Where is the date on the calendar that you're going to open? Where is the, where's that opening night? It's like, it's a little like, getting married. It's like, you get engaged, and you start to plan, but the second that, that wedding invitation shows up with the date on it, then it really means something. And so it's been very hard without, knowing concretely that there'll be dates for these things, for these things that we're working on. Well, that's, it's actually the second time that I've applied. The first time I applied, I didn't get it. And in the responses, because you were able to look at what your respondees said, somebody wrote that my dialogue sparkles and that I should keep at it. And so that's been kind of a running joke at my house, that my dialogue sparkles. But no, so this is the second time that I applied, but getting the grant was, it's just a solid stamp of validation is what it amounts to. I mean, your peers are essentially saying that your work is worthy. And I remember when I got the call, I was like, it came out of nowhere. It was a Saturday afternoon, and I was just absolutely blown away by it. I mean, it was just, it was such a joyous moment to be acknowledged in that way. What it basically did was it bought me time, because once you get that kind of sort of surprise influx of financial support, what happens is and I'm sure I'm not the only person who's going to tell you this. If you were a playwright, chances are you also teach. And there are very few, there are very few playwrights that I know who don't teach. Otherwise, they are playwrights who also are actively, working in TV or film. And I've also, dipped my toe into both of those arenas. I teach. I run the theater program at Hudson County Community College, and it allowed me simply to take 2 semesters where I was able to lighten my load and actually spend that time, actually writing. I think the drive to be a playwright is based on in love. You're driven by love. So, because if you wanted to, become a wealthy writer, you'd go into screenwriting and you'd work, maybe on a Netflix show, right? If you're so lucky. But, if you're working in the vein of playwriting, there's no promises to you. There's very little, financial reward, if any at all, which is again why the grant is so special. And so for me, the stories that I want to tell are the most personal stories, because those are driven by love, and I would write them anyway. Even if I didn't get a grant, I would write that story anyway because it meant something to me, and it was something that I dearly wanted to say. And that's not to say that I have not worked for hire. I actually spent like 5 years, bouncing back and forth between New York and LA, working on TV and film projects. But I was a gun for hire, and the rules are much different when you are a gun for hire than when you were sitting down at your desk and telling a story that you must tell. It's going to be a tie, because I have 2 solo shows that I'm very, very proud of. One is called My Italy Story, and one is called Long Gone Daddy. Both of them I created this sort of, when I started as a solo performer, I was very influenced by Spalding Gray, one of the great monologists of our day. And when I first moved to New York City, I bartended at a place called the Prince Street Bar downtown in Soho, and he was a regular customer. He literally lived down the street right there on Wooster. The Performing Arts Garage was there, and he invited me to come down and see his work. And I went, and he used to do these interview shows in between his bigger performance pieces, like Swimming to Cambodia. He would literally invite audience members up onto the stage, pick their names from a hat, and he would interview them. And I went to see him, and he actually interviewed me. So I was really sort of immediately sucked into his way of performing and his grasp on storytelling. And then later on, I became a big fan of Chaz Palminteri's A Bronx Tale. And that was the moment where I actually sat in the audience and watched Chaz perform that, first as a solo show before it became a film and then a Broadway musical. And I remember, the light bulb went off, and I said, I can do that. I have stories that I can tell, that I want to tell. And so I sat down and I wrote this piece called My Italy Story, which is about my Italian, essentially about my Italian roots. And I say essentially because what I did learn along the way was that it's very, very difficult to write autobiographical pieces, because life doesn't play out in 3 perfect acts. Okay, so I developed this sort of alter ego character called Thomas DeGatto, and I call my work semi-autobiographical theater, because it allows me to use the authority of fact and the freedom of fiction at the same time, while allowing me also to reconstruct, any piece that I'm working on to give me that beautiful, perfect 3-act structure that, I think most writers, seek in their work. So I have these 2 pieces. They're companion pieces. They're published. They're called My Italy Story and Long Gone Daddy. I performed both, although My Italy Story also moved off Broadway and had a very successful run off Broadway with the great actor Danny Mastrogiorgio, who's been on Broadway multiple times, who performed it off Broadway. And so it's a tie.
The New Jersey Individual Artist Playwright Fellows Showcase is a project of the New Jersey State Council on the Arts and the New Jersey Theater Alliance. The New Jersey State Council on the Arts is a partner agency of the National Endowment for the Arts.